All right, timing. This is probably the only really difficult part about nutrition, in my opinion. And we're going to try and simplify this for you so that you've got a general understanding and rule of thumb that you can stick to. So we've talked about construction and using the hand-sized portions and using the food charts to help construct a meal. And this is really important, especially when you're caught on the run or with a busy day or out for dinner. So understanding these principles of the big three and the construction, you'll be able to have a better control of making the right choice and feel more in control of what you're doing with your nutrition. Timing requirements are slightly different for men and women, especially for post-workout meals, and the use of carbohydrates is different for women and men, between men, all right? Women require more carbohydrate intake to help manage recovery, stress, and the menstrual cycle. Carb timing refers to consuming high-energy carbohydrates, not low-energy carbohydrates. So when we're consuming high-energy carbohydrates, we've got like this 3 to 5 hour window from the start of an intense exercise. So if you're training in the evening, then consume high-energy carbohydrates the next morning as well. So the general rule of thumb I try and use is if you train in the morning and you finish your workout at, say, 7 a.m., high-energy carbohydrates with breakfast, high-energy carbohydrates with the next meal after your workout, so post-workout meal 2. But if you train in the evening, then we will also want to do carbohydrates in the meal post the workout, being afternoon dinner or afternoon snack. So if you finish your training session at 5, you don't have dinner till 7. Obviously, you've got to have a high protein and high carbohydrate snack to get you through to dinner. And then you'd have carbohydrates with dinner. I also don't mind those people having, say, a rolled oat or something high protein mixed with a little bit of carbohydrates, or an omelette with some pumpkin or potato in it. It's also not a bad one. Got a starchy vegetable in there. Having that for breakfast. So if you trained in our 4:45 session or a 5:30 p.m. session, you'd have carbohydrates after the workout and you'd have carbohydrates the next morning. Once again, we'll go through this with you on a one-on-one basis in our coaching session. But just to give yourself a better control and understanding, we've got this 3 to 5 hour window generally that we stick to. And I use a different rule of thumb if you are female and you train in the evening. Pre-workout, not everybody needs this. And once again, we'll go through this in the coaching session, all right? And it's how you decide to pick your pre-workout meal. Men don't seem to need that as much on a scientific basis. Training fasted doesn't have the same detrimental effect as it does on women. Training fasted for women, so if you train early in the morning and you don't consume anything beforehand, really elevates your cortisol. And that is not a good thing for your nervous system. And it also has been shown to cause thyroid dysfunction in women. So we really want to try and avoid fasted training if you are female. And we will help build a pre-workout meal in, because the standard one of protein powder in milk or water, doing that every day is not going to be great for your gut. So we'll help you find other options. All right. But we want to stick to a rule of about 15 grams of protein in a pre-workout snack and some carbohydrate from a fruit or a vegetable. Within an hour of completing the intense workouts, we want to have 1 palm size of protein, 1 fistful of low energy carbohydrates, and 1 cupped palm size of high energy carbohydrates, and the 1 thumb of omega-3 fatty acids. So when you go back to those macro breakdowns we did before of the big 3, post-workout meal wants all of it in there. We want the high energy carb, we want the protein, we want the low energy carbohydrates, and we want the fats. Post-workout meal 2 is the same. If you're within 2 to 3 hours of the workout, so if you finish your workout at 7 a.m. and you have breakfast at 7:30, by about 10:30, 11, you're going to want a little bit of a snack to get you through to lunchtime. All right. This can include some carbohydrate. Using our meal plans and using the coaching sessions will help map out for you what these meals look like. These are just the things that we bookend the meals with, and you'll notice in the recipes within the meal plans that this is how we bookend those and we put those together. It's got a lot of these requirements built into them. Now we go to the templates. So if you are female and you train in the morning, we want to try and encourage this protein snack. I've gone for the simple one here, but I don't encourage we do the same thing every day because it's not good for your gut. Half a scoop of protein powder, some creatine in some almond milk or oat milk because that encourages carbohydrate. And if you are someone who uses pre-workouts, which I do not encourage, or you have a coffee before you train, add the coffee shot to the protein smoothie. All right. And it's only a little smoothie. It's only this much. It's a few mouthfuls. It's not much. But we need to encourage this because, like I said, it's elevated cortisol and thyroid dysfunction is one element that we need to take into account when we are talking about fasted training, which we want to avoid. Then we've got the breakfast here. So we've gone for the staple of, eggs on your favorite piece of gluten-free toast or sourdough. We put some flaxseed oil on it, and then we want to chuck some veggies in that as well. So mushroom, pumpkin, or spinach, or just avocados, whatever we can. Load this brekkie right up. Snack one, this could be like a smoothie, and how you would work this is if you've had a protein powder supplement pre-workout, we don't want to make a smoothie with protein powder in again. That's too much protein powder in a short space of time. We could do something like a homemade protein ball that's made with almond butter or something like that. Or we could do like some smoked salmon and apple pieces or any of that kind of thing. And your meal plans will help give you ideas on this, but we want to try and avoid having protein powder twice in such a short period of time. And we might have, I've picked a meal from the meal plans here. So we've got a high protein chicken wrap. And that rounds out your carbohydrate use for the day. Then we might go for something like a protein smoothie with a little bit of protein cheese in it, or cottage cheese, or something else that is high protein we can add to it without using a protein powder. But this is where we could use a smoothie because they're simple, easy to make it work. There's also a bunch of other snacks you can make and take with you to work that you'll see in the meal plans. This isn't always necessary. It's only if you're really hungry. And only once you start to really build some lean muscle and your metabolism starts to work to a point where you are hungry is this beneficial. But definitely this morning to lunchtime routine should be staple. Then we've got dinner. We could have a stir fry. We could have meat and veg, anything really. But we want to avoid carbohydrate at night, regardless of if you've trained in the morning, we want to try and avoid carbohydrate at night. And then if you're used to an after dinner snack, we could do a really sweet little tiny snack. But once again, this is only if you're hungry, and that would round out your day. If you are female, evening workouts, pretty much just the reverse order. We just don't have the pre-workout snack, obviously. Then we move down through the day here. A lot of these meals I've chosen from the meal plan, so you'll be able to see those when you get your meal plans. Meal 4, if you've done a long day of work, in the morning, we just want to make sure that we're eating 30 to 45 minutes post-waking. And we want to try and eat before we have any caffeine. Having coffee before you eat ramps cortisol up without any nutrients coming in behind that to help downregulate your nervous system. And you're already tightening up your nervous system and making it really hard for your body to, be calm and clear for the rest of the day. So we really want to eat something before we have a coffee. So that's really, really important. Meal 4, depending on what time you train. If you train at 5:30 and you eat lunch at about 1 o'clock, that's a huge gap of time between eating and training, and you're not going to perform at your best. So this is why I recommend having an afternoon snack before you train. Meal 5, this is just dinner. This is where we could have something yummy because we've just trained. Now a little bit of carbohydrate, and see how we got some homemade sweet potato fries and some bunless burgers. Or we could have a burger with a sourdough bun or sourdough bread, something like that. And that's a really yummy version. I wouldn't recommend doing that every night. But then we have an after dinner snack with a little bit of muesli in it and maybe a little bit of choc chip and some nuts and seeds for fats. Non-workout day, if you are male or female, is the same. because there's no requirements around training. All right, we still want to get that 4 to 5 meals in per day, and we're using a bit less carbohydrate because we haven't trained. So we might have some sourdough in the morning. We might chuck some muesli or some oats into this smoothie in the morning, and then we can start to rely on the protein and the low energy carbohydrates to fuel us for the rest of the day. But this is, if this is a weekend and you want to go out and have a yummy lunch at the pub, or go out to a cafe for breakfast, then plan your day around that. Like, still have the carbohydrates, but understand where you're going to have them. So don't have sourdough and eggs for breakfast if you're planning to go to a winery and have breads for lunch. Like, try and plan your day out a bit better than that. The male version, this isn't as much of a requirement. So the pre-workout is not as important. It's just something that you may or may not need, depends on how your metabolism works. I personally need to eat something little before I train, or I just don't have the output. But that's not for everybody, and that's something we can work with you on in your coaching sessions. And we want to get that 30 to 35 grams of protein in, so slightly more protein than what I'm suggesting for the women who are doing 25 to 30. It's about an extra 5 grams per main meal. Then we have a protein smoothie or like a homemade protein ball with some fruit. There's also lots of other options. Jerky and fruit is also another good option. High protein homemade chicken wrap, if we've trained in the morning, is another good option. Or we could do lots of protein with lots of veg and a handful of carbohydrates. So steak and veg with some homemade potato chips or something. If we've had a smoothie here, I wouldn't encourage having another smoothie. I'd encourage another whole food snack. So if you had a smoothie here, you might go like some jerky and some fruit here in the afternoon. All right. Try and not have like so much dairy in each day. Then we have stir fry or some more protein and veg, some steak and veg or something for for dinner, sorry. And then only if you're hungry, you could use a protein and yogurt. You could use like a homemade protein ball, or you could do some jerky again at night. So many different options, hard to think of off the top of your head, to be honest. So in these meal plans, I've just picked really simple ones, but meal plans lay out heaps of options. And they are designed in a way to create microbiome diversity. And this is why I use meal plans, because building one of these out for you is really difficult unless a software spits out some recipes for us. So it just makes life so much easier. Evening workout, not too dissimilar to the women's. Make sure we eat 30 to 45 minutes post-waking, and that we do not have a coffee before we eat. We want to eat before we have the coffee. So we've got jerky and fruit here as a snack. Another meal plan recipe that you'll see in one of the meal plans. And then we've got, bunless burgers and sweet potato chips. And then we can do a protein yogurt or a protein bar, a homemade protein bar. There's so many different options. But that is how a day should look. So we're getting between 1 to 6 meals if you're male, and you'll notice that if you're female, the 6th meal is very much only if you really, really, feel like it. All right. It's at least 1 to 4 or 5 meals per day if you're female. The men can probably take a little bit of an extra meal because their calorie requirements for males is just much higher. So if your calorie requirements are much higher, it's easier to spread those calories out across more meals than to try and condense them into 3 or 4 meals. It's just easier for your body to metabolize. And if you're eating every 3 to 4 hours, your metabolism is always working, gives you the best energy supply. So we get an insulin spike when we eat. That will drop off after a period of time, depending on if you construct the meal correctly. You'll get a nice peter out of energy. So if we're eating every 3 to 4 hours, our energy will come up when we eat, and it should stay nice and consistent across the day if we are eating every 3 to 4 hours. Then we have some blank templates for you to fill out for yourself. So based off the information you've read here and what you've listened to me talk about, you can go ahead and build something for yourself, and we can review these together. All right. So if you're building, this is just to ascertain how you've condensed the information and how you're going to apply it. So here's your morning workout template, evening workout template, and a non-workout day. So go ahead and build those, and these are something we can go through together in your coaching session, and we'll help build them out with you. And we've got 2 non-workout day ones. All right, so that is your templates in your timing. So that was probably the most amount of information you're going to hear me blurt out at one time. Don't get overwhelmed by the amount of information in there. We're going to go through it together, and we're going to make it specific to your day. But this just helps you start to develop a visual representation of how your day looks and a plan for how your day looks. Because if we do not plan, prepare to fail.